Hello everyone, this is Ashley Tucker. Thank you for joining me today. For today's card, I'm going to be using a new stamp set from Mama Elephant called Stackable Cuties. This is a really adorable stamp set with a lot of little critters in it, and I'm going to be coloring them all in today. Right now I only have 9 of them on my paper. There are 10 in the set, but I will be stamping the last one on another sheet. So I stamped all of these on Bristol Smooth paper with Gina K Amalgam Ink, and now I'm coloring them in with my Arteza Real Brush pens. For the elephant that I'm coloring, I used the colors Dolphin Gray and Fair Skin. If you want to know more about how I color with the Arteza watercolor markers, I recently did a video all about them, and I'll put a link up to that video in the card above. I kept the coloring for all of these critters pretty simple. Sometimes when I'm coloring with these markers, I like to use a few different shades for each area. For example, with the elephant, I would use a few different colors of gray in order to color in the body. But for this elephant, with keeping it pretty simple, I only used one shade of gray, and then I just kind of added more of that shade in the areas that I wanted to darken, and that's how I got my variation in the tones. And you also get variation in the tone when you blend out the color with your brush. And honestly, the method that I use for coloring kind of changes up depending on how I'm feeling. Sometimes I'll grab one marker, sometimes 2, and sometimes 3. It really just depends on what I'm feeling at the time. Okay, so for the pig, I used one color. I used the color Fair Skin in order to color in the body, and then I took my black marker and colored in his front feet. For this little cat, I decided I really wanted to do an orange tabby cat, so for the base color of the fur, I used the color Honey, and then I added in the stripes with the color Ginger. I also colored in the cat's nose with my black marker. For this cute little puppy dog, I thought that he would look really adorable with some spots. So I started with a base layer of the color Ginger, and then I took my chocolate marker and I colored in his ears and added a few spots. Whenever I add spots on a dog, I always like to do one of them on the eye. I think it looks really good that way. I don't know why. Next, I colored in his nose using my black marker, and then I took the color Pale Skin and colored in the little bone that he's holding. For the fox, I really didn't want to color him in bright orange because I wanted him to really go with all of the other critters that are going to be on the card, and I didn't want him to stand out as the one really bright thing when all of the other ones are kind of neutral. So I went with the color Orange Rust, which is a really earthy looking orange color, and I think that it goes really well with those other neutral colors. And then of course I don't like to leave the white fur completely white. I like to shade it in a little bit, so I used Dolphin Gray to shade in the white fur on the fox, and then I also colored in his nose with my black marker. For the monkey, I used the color Chocolate Brown for the fur, and I used the color Pale Skin for the face and the ears, and then I colored in the banana using the color Bumblebee Yellow. For the koala, I used the color Dolphin Gray for his fur, and for the inside of his ears, I used the color Fair Skin. Now, because his nose is a little bit larger, I didn't want to use the color black. I wanted to use a little bit lighter of a shade. So I chose to use the color Ash Black, and I also made sure to blend it out so that there was a nice highlight. The koala is also holding a little branch in his hand, and I colored the twig in with the color Chocolate and the leaves with the color Emerald Green. You might have noticed that I skipped over the coloring for the unicorn, and that's just because I didn't end up using him on this card. I didn't really think that he went with the other animals, both because he's rainbow colored and because he's a unicorn, so I'll have to use him on a different card in the future. Now for this bear, I decided to do something a little bit different, and I went for a color that I wouldn't normally go for, which is this grape purple color. And I really like the way that this came out. I think that this purple color is close enough to the brown family that it works with the other colors, but it also adds a little bit more interest. Once I finished coloring all of the animals on this paper, I darkened some of the eyes using a Copic multiliner, and then I used the color Rouge Pink to add some blush to all of their cheeks. Okay, so here's the last little critter that comes from the stamp set, this cute little rhino, and I only used one color to color in the skin on this rhino. I used the color Dolphin Gray, and then I colored in his horn using the color Pale Skin. I also darkened up his eyes a little bit at the end, and I also used the Rouge Pink to add some blush to his cheeks. Okay, so now all the coloring is done, and I used the coordinating dies in order to cut all of those little critters out. I also took a small circle die and I cut 9 holes out of this square piece of cardstock. This is a 6x6 piece of cardstock, and I did have to do quite a bit of measuring in order to get those circles cut out nice and even. I do have a video from a long time ago where I did a similar card, and I do show in that video how I measured out where to cut the circles. So if you're interested in seeing that, I'll put a card up above and you can check that out. So as you can see, I'm adding one of the little animals to each of those windows using my Gina K Connect glue. And I did plan out beforehand where I was going to place each animal. I didn't just place them randomly because I didn't want certain colors to be right next to each other. Like, for example, I didn't want the elephant and the koala to be right next to each other because they're both gray, so I wanted to spread those two out. I think it's just more visually appealing that way. I used my ATG gun to add some adhesive all over the back of this panel, and then I took a piece of acetate, which I cut to be exactly the same size as the panel, and I covered the back. This creates all of the windows that I'm going to be turning into shakers. So I added a bunch of doubled up foam tape around each of those windows so that each one of them is their own separate little shaker. I have this piece of fog gray cardstock from Simon Says Stamp, which is cut to be slightly larger than that window panel. And on top of that piece of fog cardstock, I have 9 little piles of sequins, one for each of those windows. Now, my original plan was to place my windowed panel on top of that piece of fog cardstock and have it lined up and have a nice even border around the edge. But of course, I could not line it up for the life of me. So plan B, I cut off the edges of that fog cardstock, which was completely not even, and then I took that whole panel and I mounted it onto a card base, which is made out of Neenah Desert Storm cardstock. And I'm actually kind of glad that I made that mistake because I really like the look of this panel on the Desert Storm cardstock. Next, I used a white gel pen and I added some highlights and details to all of my little critters. For the sentiment, I took one of the little chat bubble stamps from the same stamp set as those little critters, and I stamped it onto some Neenah Solar White cardstock, and this sentiment says Happy Bee Day, and I popped it up right above the bear so that it looks like he's saying that. Finally, I went over that little chat bubble with my Wink of Stella glitter brush in order to give it a little sparkle, and then this card was all done. Thank you for watching today. I hope you really enjoyed this fun shaker card design. All of the supplies that I used for this card can be found in the description down below. If you're new to my channel and you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you can see all of my future videos. I'm going to be back with a new video on Monday. Again, thank you for watching. I appreciate all of you, and I hope you have a good day today.